What's up, you guys? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cindy, for those of you who do not know me. I want to share with you guys how I was able to pass my NASM CPT exam on the first try. So I am officially a certified personal trainer and I am so excited about it. But I want to be honest, I have never been a test taker. Like, something that I used to dread was taking multiple choice tests because I just had a lot of bad experiences when I was younger. And so I want to share some of the things I was able to do and some of the tips to hopefully help you if you're interested in doing the same. I'm happy that I was able to pass on the first try. Not everybody does, and I was a bit nervous going into it, but I definitely learned a lot of things along the way that can hopefully help you. So if that sounds interesting, keep watching. The first thing that I recommend doing after you buy your package, so what I did was after the Olympics last year, I purchased the online study packet, and it allows you to study for, I think 6 months is the maximum, and you can get the actual book, like a physical book, but I did it just on my computer. And that was really easy for me because I travel and I go places, and it was just easy to bring my computer with me versus a big textbook. So that's what I personally did. Before I get into the content, I want to recommend that you book your exam as soon as you buy the test. So I did not book my exam until probably 2 weeks right before my exam. And honestly, I didn't study as much as I did until I hit those 2 weeks right before, because I was like, oh, now I know I have to hurry up and take this. And so if you can do this at the beginning, like when you first buy your exam, if you can just go ahead and book that, you can always change it if you have to. You're not bound to this test. But if you can go in and book that test right away, I promise you, you will feel more motivated to study. It will like put a little bit of a fire under you because you now know you have a date. I recently just took it a week ago, so this is all gonna be fresh information for you guys. You can honestly take this exam in a shorter time. You don't have to try for 6 months. I just personally read the whole textbook just because I wanted to know the material. I wanted to make sure that I felt comfortable with everything. But to be honest, a lot of the stuff's not actually on the exam. So if you're on a time crunch, you can properly prepare for this exam without having to read the entire textbook, but try and take your time and making sure you know the material and you just feel comfortable with it. So yeah, if you can book your exam right away, that will make you feel a lot more motivated to take it and to just feel like you now have something to prepare for. I also recommend like not having a lot to do. Like, let's say you are in the middle of moving or a big life event is happening. I don't recommend purchasing this course or taking this exam around these times because you want to make sure you feel comfortable going into it. I actually dealt with the passing of my father and that set me back a bit. So, and obviously like unforeseen things like that can happen, but if you can like do it during a time where you don't have a lot of things happening in your life, because it will make it a lot harder to focus on it and do it quickly. But if this is something that you have time for, I highly recommend just, doing it and knocking it out as quick as you can, because like I said, you don't actually need to take half a year to take this exam. So when you purchase the exam, it's going to be about $600, I believe, when you purchase it. So you get the study and you also get the CPR test. So you get CPR material and you can take it. I was able to pass my CPR test. It's not very hard. You end up getting the certificate here. After you pass it, you want to make sure you have this certificate with you when you are getting ready to take the exam. So you need to pass this before you actually take the exam because they're gonna ask you for it. I went to school for education, but I didn't really know a lot of like anatomy and muscles and all these other things. And so this was definitely foreign territory to me. Yes, I've been an athlete. For those of you who are used to my page, you know that I've been an athlete most of my life. So some of the things were things I was familiar with just because I've run and I've been doing things with my body. But in terms of actually knowing definitions and knowing how things move and different exercises in the gym to help people who are new beginners, I did not know any of that, okay? Like I said, I passed on the first try because I was prepared, not because I knew this beforehand. I know people can look at me and say, you already knew all this stuff, but a lot of new things for me. So I wanna remind you that you become a trainer by actually training and coaching people. Like, this stuff is great to know, but you're not gonna feel super like equipped. So just remember that when you're like studying. Like, if you feel like, oh my gosh, all this terminology is so hard to remember, just know you're gonna have to just step into it. I wrote down the things that were on the exam. I'm gonna share with you guys some of the things that I think you should study and that will hopefully help you feel confident going into the exam. So let's go into some of the stuff that was on it. Some of the things that you're gonna need to know. So the first thing is, If you can, go and follow Show Up Fitness on YouTube, follow their podcast on Spotify, and also purchase the book. I did, and it was so helpful because he has a lot of very helpful material in his book. He does a good job of like summarizing some of the things that are going to be on the exam, and he really gets you prepared to feel confident. Looking at his stuff really helped me say, okay, I can take this into bite-sized pieces and understand it more instead of just, you know, feeling so overwhelmed, because this is a 700-page book, okay? That's a lot of material, and there's a lot of things on there that you're gonna be like, what the heck did I just study? I don't even know what this is. But like I said, he does a good job, and it's another one that I think is like sort of kind of healthy. I forgot their name. I'll attach it in the description, but he does a good job of like kind of also highlighting the anatomy and different things. They just give you a lot of tips videos. So you're gonna wanna know the stages of change. So pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance. You're gonna wanna know all of them. What they're gonna do is they're gonna prepare you in such a way where they'll give you a client who's coming in and they are in this phase of, you know, wanting to work out, but they're not really sure. They're gonna ask you, where are they in the stages of change? You wanna make sure you're really confident on those. It's really easy to remember them, but also think about them in a scenario. What will it look like if I had somebody who I'm training who is in this stage? Know the macronutrients, so percentages and calories, so proteins, fats, carbs, how many calories, how much percentage daily intake should people be taking, know all that stuff, because there's a lot of different questions on there. I probably got like 6 to 7 questions of that. So know the ATP-PC system, glycolysis, beta oxidation, different energy systems. So what energy system is a 100-meter sprinter using, or somebody who is, you know, doing activity for long periods of time? So they're gonna ask you questions like that. So just know which of those systems like somebody might be in. What I did, what helped me with some of these things was I flashcarded a lot of these things, and it helped me remember, okay, this is the definition of this system. And I also had mnemonics. Definitely know the OTP model. So that is something that so many people on here will say. If you've watched any other videos other than mine, you're gonna hear know the OTP model. So know strength, endurance, power, know all of them. There's gonna be a lot of questions on the OTP model, but they're not gonna necessarily ask you, what is this stage in the OPT model? They're gonna put different scenarios, and the questions might be very confusing. So I want you to really know that like really, really well. And if you go and just, you know, flashcard all those as well, that will help you. You really, really want to know the underactive and overactive muscles. Like that is a lot of the test, okay? And so another thing I did for that was I like had a sheet and I just wrote them down, and I would remember, okay, what muscles are underactive? And I'll just continuously write them down. And did that really, really help me remember, you know, this one is overactive. And honestly, just think about the muscles in your body that are getting used. So overactive muscles are muscles that are really, you know, overused, and you're gonna have to stretch those and loosen those up. So overactive is stretching and loosening up. Underactive are things that aren't getting used, so you're gonna wanna strengthen those. So remember that for the test. And I think what helped me is like just thinking of things as like common sense. So my calf muscles are gonna be overactive because I'm using my calves so much. Hip flexor is overactive. Underactive muscles, like what are the things that are underactive that aren't being used as much? Like your gluteus maximus and all these other things that maybe aren't necessarily always being used that people are always trying to strengthen. So just like think of it in a way where it's like common sense. When I took off my like testing brain and I just put on my like common sense brain, I think these questions were able to make a lot more sense than when I was super stressed and overwhelmed with everything. So sometimes you need to do that in order to remember things. It's like, okay, what muscles do I even use normally? Like that helps me personally just to make it make sense for my brain. So you're gonna wanna know ventilatory threshold 1 and 2. So which one is somebody using? Just know like the basics of that. You're going to know global and local muscles, know the vitamins, so fat soluble and water soluble vitamins, just know the basic. There's not a lot of questions on there. Planes of motion, this was a big one, okay? Memorize these. So that's sagittal, frontal, transverse, know those and know what exercises might be in them. So like lateral raises or calf raises or whatever, like what exercises would be in these different planes of motion. Agonists, antagonists, synergists, and stabilizers. Something to remember is for stabilizers, upper body is always gonna be your rotator cuff, and for your lower body, it's always going to be your core, so like transverse abdominis. So just remember that you're always going to, those are always gonna be the stabilizers. And then you also want to know, you know, what muscle is the agonist for this exercise and which one's the antagonist. So agonist is like the main prime mover. Antagonist is the opposite of the agonist. Synergists are helping the agonist know the muscles of like different movements for these things. Memorize the definitions, but also associate all of the movements with these as well. There are gonna be 1 to 2 questions on the different instructors. So general manager, fitness managers, etc. So just understand those. There's not many questions on there, so I wouldn't stress out about that. Really get to know knee valgus, upper and lower cross syndrome. I really know all of them. So knee valgus is when the knees cave in. Lower cross syndrome is when your butt sticks out. Upper cross is when you look like a question mark. Just memorize these things. Like give yourself like 1 or 2 words to help you remember all of those things, and like mnemonics or whatever you need to do. But definitely know those, because there was like probably, I would say like 7 questions on there for me. Oh, there's also 120 questions on there, and we'll go a little bit more about like the actual testing, but just know there's about 120 questions. Only 100 of them count towards your actual score. 20 of them are just like, I don't know, for research or whatever, and you don't know which 20 of those are. So just really give your best in all the questions. You're gonna wanna know concentric, eccentric, isometric, and isokinetic. So definitely know that. Eccentric is always the easy movement. So eccentric is when you are going to be going down. Concentric is the harder part. Know the definitions of altered inhibition, reciprocal inhibition, synergist dominance. Just know all of those and flashcard those. Simple. You really want to know the anatomic locations. Know the definition of diffusion. So that one was a little bit hard for me to remember at first, but I didn't know that on the test, but I was like, I think I studied this, so it helped me. There are a few questions on like CEUs, so continuing education questions on there. So just know like how much, how many years you need to update your NASM certification. Know the basics of all that. Like there's not too many questions, it's probably like 2 to 3. So the beginning of the exam eases you into it with those kind of questions. So just remember those, and yeah, just know that you're gonna have a few of those on there. Know extension, flexion, plantar flexion, and dorsiflexion. So dorsiflexion is when your toes are pointing up. Plantar flexion is when your toes are pointing down to the ground. Definitely know the basic exercises. So like ball cobra, bicep curls, military press. Know all of those, and like also when to regress and progress. So if somebody is struggling to do a ball cobra, like what would you do to regress them? Or if somebody is, mastered this stabilization thing, what would you progress them to? Like just know like which exercises would progress them. There aren't many questions on there like that, but just make sure you get like a good and general understanding. Know hypertension, so 140/90 is the systolic and diastolic, just like know the numbers of that. Know performance assessments, so 40-yard dash, left test, YMCA step test. Know those, there's a few questions on there. But yeah, just generally know like all of the OPT model. Like I can't stress that one enough. And also just make sure you know overactive and underactive. Like those were the main things on the exam, like so many different questions regarding that. Okay, so now that I talked about most of the content, so those are like the main things that are gonna be on the test. Now that I've spoken about that, just know that none of these tests are gonna be the exact same. So even though I just shared all of that, there might be like 1 or 2 questions on your exam that come up a little bit differently. Like I don't think there's anybody in this world who's ever taken the exact same test as anybody else, because they have so many different generated questions. Now that we went into the content, I wanna give you some test taking advice and things that helped me not feel super anxious when I took the test. So for the test, you have 120 minutes to answer 120 questions. And so like what I did was I went through the exam. I wouldn't say I went through it really quickly, but I made sure to read all of the questions through. So I would go to like question 1, for example, read the question. If I knew the answer, obviously answer it as quick as I could. If I didn't, I would bookmark it, but I also would just answer it in a way where I knew like maybe this might be the answer. Like if you can try to actually put something down, I don't think you should waste time doing it. But what I did was I just answered it, and if I didn't know if that was right or not, I just bookmarked it. But I didn't waste more than a minute on it initially. And the reason I did this was because 1, there wasn't a timer on there for me. So I did it through a proctored online test, and I didn't actually know how much time I had left. And so you don't want to get to a place where you're just taking the exam and moving all slow, and then all of a sudden it's like you have 5 minutes left and you go back and put questions in there. So I think it's just good to have, just in case, to have like something answered versus nothing, because you have a better shot at answering something correctly if you have something down, right? Versus nothing. So like I said, I went through each question, read it carefully. If I knew the answer, great, answered it, moved on. If I didn't, I would at least answer it to the best of my ability, and then I would bookmark it and come back. And so don't waste more than a minute on each question initially, because the time is ticking and you don't want to waste your time. I also took a lot of practice exams. So I took a lot of the NASM quizzes. I went through all those quizzes, and at the end of each chapter, took them until I got 100% on each of them personally. They're only like 10 questions. And so I made sure to like take it and then retake it and then retake it. And then for me personally, that helped me remember some of the questions. And I'm gonna be honest, like I think some of those questions were literally verbatim on the actual test. So I personally would recommend taking the NASM quizzes. Some people will say you shouldn't, but it helped me. I also took like the NASM like end of chapter exams. Those ones were 50 questions. I didn't do as well on all of those, and I didn't hit 100%, but my goal was to get like between 80 and 90, so that helped me. I also recommend taking the actual practice exam. So I took the NASM practice exam 3 times, and I got like, honestly, It's not the same. Those tests are not the exact same. I think the actual exam for me personally was easier than the practice exams personally. I've heard the opposite, but I took it like 3 times and got like 74, 72, 71. I was just like, okay, I'm passing, but not that well. So am I actually gonna pass this actual exam? And lo and behold, I did. So I wouldn't look too much into what your actual practice exam scores are. I would just take a few of them. And like I said, if you can go and get Show Up Fitness's study guide, they have some questions on there for you. And those questions honestly resembled more of what was on the test than the actual NASM ones. So like I said, if you can just get those questions, those will help you tremendously. I took all those quizzes and they actually have explanations and videos for you guys. I got to my exam about 15 minutes before it started. And honestly, if you can, I recommend giving yourself a little bit more time than that, because I had some issues. So I don't know what was going on, but my computer was acting a little bit funny and I started getting a little bit nervous. I found myself like, whew, okay, I'm getting really close to my exam time. So 15 minutes definitely was not enough time. If you can do it like 30 minutes, definitely try that out. Day before your exam, make sure you are checking your computer, making sure that you did all the tests and checks they asked you to do. You also want to make sure everything's up to date. So you might have to do like a system update before you take the test if you're doing it this way. Now you can go and register yourself to an actual testing facility. I preferred doing it at my house. Like, it wasn't that stressful. I felt way more chill and I felt like I was taking my practice exams, which I think helped me with my test anxiety. I think if I went somewhere to take it, it would have felt way more like pressurized and everything. So doing it at home actually just made me more chill, and I think that calmed my brain down quite a bit. They are very strict, however, so something they did was they made me show my whole room, so you want to make sure it's a very clear desk. You cannot have anything on your desk at all. You also want to make sure you don't have like water in a bottle, so you can only have a clear cup. You can't have your phone, you can't have watches, you literally can't have anything around you. So definitely make sure to put things around you like far, far away. And like I said, even have a clear space. Like my office has a few things in there, so like as long as it wasn't on my desk, it was fine. I did all that, so that took about 15 to 20 minutes before the actual test, which your heart's already pounding, you're nervous, you're like, okay, I'm ready to take this, stop asking me about all these questions. And I actually didn't have an actual person ask me any question. It was like, I mean, there was a person there, excuse me, but they were like, it was like a DMing thing. It wasn't like we were talking face to face. So I'd have no idea who was watching me. I just know somebody who was watching me. And so yeah, make sure you have a good webcam, make sure your audio is working, and then also make sure you're like looking at your screen, because there was a point where I looked off to space and was thinking and talking, and she's like, who's in your room? Or he or she, I don't know who it was. They were like, is somebody there? And I'm like, no, this is how I process, sorry. So if you can, like, keep your eyes on your screen. It's a little bit intimidating, I'm gonna be honest, but just don't look around too much and make yourself look like you're cheating, because obviously I wasn't, but they might think you are. And let's see, if you're getting nervous in the middle of the exam, definitely just take a second to breathe. Like, it actually isn't that bad. Like, when you sit down and think about how much time they're giving you and the amount of questions, if you've studied pretty well, it'll be more than enough time. Like, I did my exam in 1 hour and 10 minutes. So I didn't even need the full hour 20. To be honest, I probably could have done it quicker, but I just went back a few times to make sure, you know, everything was answered. One thing I will say is your first answer is typically the right answer. So on my practice exams, I noticed that I would go back and change a lot of answers, and then when I saw the results, but I erased the right answer. So if your gut is telling you something, trust it. However, I will say still bookmark the ones you don't know, because taking the exam, you'll go through and you'll see questions that help you answer some questions you might have forgot. So you'll see other ones and it's like, oh, this was very similar to that first one I skipped or didn't understand very well. Let me go back and change that. So there were a few I had to do that, and that helped me out a lot. Remember that all you need is 70% to pass this test. You don't need 100%, you don't need 92, you just need 70, okay? So if you're taking it and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know, I'm getting a few wrong, that's okay. Like, you can get 30 wrong and still pass the test. So I know there was a few that I was like, I absolutely have no clue. I'm gonna like just, you know, wing it here and hopefully hope for the best. But if you're prepared, if you've studied, if you know most of the material, you're most likely gonna pass, because, you know, it's not the easiest test, I'm gonna be honest with you. But if you know, you're getting some wrong, that's totally fine. And I know sometimes you'll feel like way more anxious if you see 3 or 4 in a row that you don't know, but there's like 5 after that you do know, like you probably are gonna be fine because you have like a little bit of a leeway. Also, with the extra 20 they have, those extra 20 might actually be a little bit harder than they need to be, just because they're trying to test some stuff out. So you might actually have gotten, you know, 50 wrong, but you still passed because the other 20 were the practice ones they needed. So I say all that to say, don't allow like a few questions here and there to stress you out while you're taking the test. Just take a deep breath, breathe out. That's what helped me when I started feeling a little bit anxious. And just relax, you know, you're gonna feel alert, you're gonna feel good that day. I would say the night before the exam, make sure you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I got about 8 the night before my exam and I felt really good when I woke up. I wouldn't cram too much the day of. Something I wish I could do and go back is like take my exam that morning versus I took it at 4 p.m. or 4:30, and I found that made me a lot more nervous. My whole day I was just like, for me, I'm a track athlete, and so I felt like I was about to run a race, and so I was just nervous. My stomach was all in bubbles. Like I was just like feeling like, okay, I just want to take this exam, versus if it was like at 10 o'clock in the morning, I could have done it and got it out the way. Now, if you're not a morning person, I don't recommend this because you might feel tired. Do what's best for you. I just know I hate waiting all day to do things. If you feel ready, take your test. Don't stress out about it. And like I said, don't over cram right before. Like study a little bit, review the material, but something I did was I relaxed my brain. So I would like listen to podcasts and just music and a few things I normally do because that helped me stay calm. And then the night before is when I probably crammed a little bit more than I should have, but it helped, so I passed. That's what I'm sticking with. So trust yourself and you got this. I think you can pass it. I think I've heard a lot of people say they failed, and I could have failed too. Honestly, if I wasn't prepared those last 2 weeks right before my exam, when I like crammed so much knowledge, I might have actually failed, to be honest with you, because I was studying so much stuff, but like I didn't know what was on the exam until I looked at the study guides. So definitely look at the NASM study guide. They have a lot of stuff on there though. So like I said, I looked at Show Up Fitness' study guide, and that's all I needed. I hope this video helps you guys take your NASM CPT. You got this. It's not that bad. You can do it. You could probably do it in 2 weeks, maybe a week, if you really just like, that's all you do. Know all the things I told you about, flashcard things, like while you're traveling, take your stuff with you, just look it over and you'll be fine. You can pass it and hopefully it'll help you. But like I said, ultimately what's gonna help you the most is just going out and training people. Like I have coached people and I've learned that me personally, I learned the best by doing that versus this kind of stuff. So yeah, just know that you're gonna learn the most when you actually go out and move and teach and help, and you know, somebody gives you feedback. I trained my husband and he gave me feedback on things that I needed to work on. So yeah, I hope this video helps you guys, and if it did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more in the future. I share my workouts behind the scenes. I share fitness tips on here. So if that sounds all interesting, definitely subscribe, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye.